Back in the 90s, one of my favorite places to go was Blockbuster. Back then, producers didn't worry too much if a film wasn't a massive box office hit, because there was always the hope that it would make its money back on home video. It was an experimental time. Studios took risks, and tons of movies flew under the radar. In this video, I'm going to review 10 forgotten gems from the 1990s, excellent films that people rarely talk about anymore, or that just never ever play on TV. Just to be clear, this isn't a ranking. Yes, I do like some of these movies more than others, but they're all great. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. And with that, let's dive into the list, and I'm starting it off with one of my favorite Nicolas Cage films, Red Rock West. Cage plays a drifter who's just passing through a small town when a bartender who happens to be the mayor mistakes him for a hitman that he hired to kill his wife. The wife is played by Laura Flynn Boyle. She may not be a household name today, but she had a big moment in the early 90s thanks to her role in Twin Peaks. Red Rock West also stars J.T. Walsh and the legendary Dennis Hopper. It was directed by John Dahl, who's best known for Rounders and The Last Seduction. These days, Dahl mostly directs TV. He's become one of the most in-demand directors in television, working on everything from The Walking Dead to Battlestar Galactica. But out of everything he's done, Red Rock West is still my favorite. When the film was finished, test screenings were a disaster, and the studio didn't know how to market it. It ended up debuting on HBO before getting a video release. As far as I can tell, it only played in a few theaters, but critics loved it and even named it one of the best films of the year. The second film on the list is The Freshman, starring Matthew Broderick as a college freshman who moves to New York City and falls for a girl whose father just happens to be in the mafia. That father is played by none other than the Godfather himself, Marlon Brando. And in the film, Brando is essentially playing Vito Corleone again. It's wild to think about now, but in 1990, Matthew Broderick was one of the most sought-after actors in Hollywood. He had just starred in Glory, which received multiple award nominations, and audiences still loved him for Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The main reason Broderick signed on to this film was so that he could work with Brando. His character Clark Kellogg couldn't be more different than Ferris Bueller. He's a shy, nervous kid who gets swept up into a series of bizarre events, including a subplot involving a Komodo dragon. The Freshman was written and directed by Andrew Bergman, one of the co-writers of Blazing Saddles, which explains why the film is so funny. Critics praised the movie, but Brando famously hated it. When the production ran over schedule, he demanded an extra $1 million for the additional week of work. He even threatened to badmouth the movie to the press if he didn't get the money. Eventually, the producers finally gave in to him. The third film on the list is The Faculty, essentially a modern remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It wasn't the first remake of that story, and it wouldn't be the last, but this version is easily my favorite. It's about a group of high school students who discover that their teachers have been taken over by aliens, and they have to stop them before they take over the world. The cast features a bunch of up-and-coming actors who would later become big stars, like Jordana Brewster, who would go on to star in The Fast and the Furious, Elijah Wood, Usher, and even Jon Stewart. The film was directed by Robert Rodriguez, who honestly was the perfect choice, especially after From Dusk Till Dawn. The script was written by Kevin Williamson, the same guy who wrote Scream and created Dawson's Creek. Most of the films on this list were critically acclaimed when they came out, but believe it or not, critics were pretty mixed on The Faculty. Personally, I think the critics who didn't like this were just plain wrong. My only real complaint about the film is its release date. For some reason, the studio thought it would be a good idea to release a horror comedy on Christmas Day. Yep, this movie came out December 25th, 1998. I honestly believe that's the main reason why this film didn't become a huge hit. And speaking of movies with breakout talent, Go is another underrated gem. Directed by Doug Liman, who also made Swingers and The Bourne Identity, Go is a crime thriller comedy set during the holidays and follows 3 interconnected stories. One about a girl selling drugs to make rent, another about a road trip to Vegas, and a third involving 2 friends who accept a very strange dinner invitation. To me, Go always felt like a teen version of Pulp Fiction. It uses a similar non-linear structure and overlapping narratives. Liman was originally supposed to direct Heartbreakers, but he turned it down to make Go instead. The production was famously exhausting and fast-paced. It was shot in just 25 days, and because almost every scene takes place at night, the cast and crew filmed from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. every day. Lyman even filmed scenes in locations without permits. Everyone involved in the film knew it was good, but it struggled at the box office. Most of the cast were unknowns at the time, and critics unfairly dismissed it as a Pulp Fiction knockoff. Honestly, it's the kind of film that would probably be way more appreciated by today's audiences. Next up is A Simple Plan, directed by Sam Raimi, the same guy who gave us the Evil Dead films and the original Spider-Man trilogy. Out of everything Raimi has made, I think A Simple Plan may actually be his best. It's about three friends played by Bill Paxton, Billy Bob Thornton, and Brent Briscoe, who find a crashed plane in the woods. Inside is a dead man and $4.3 million in cash. They decide to split the money and keep it a secret, but secrets like that are never easy to keep, especially when the original owners of the money come looking for it. Originally, Ben Stiller was attached to the project and even worked on an early draft of the script, but he had a falling out with the studio. Then John Dahl, the guy who made Red Rock West, was approached to direct and wanted to bring Nicolas Cage in to star. But after Savoy Pictures, the studio that owned the rights, shut down, the project then moved to Paramount. At one point, two-time Oscar nominee John Boorman was set to direct, but he had to drop out due to a scheduling conflict. Eventually, Sam Raimi was brought on board. It might seem like an odd choice, this film is nothing like Raimi's usual work, but trust me, this movie works.
Can you tell us what this is all about? Looking for a plane?
Next up is another film featuring Bill Paxton, though this time in a much smaller role. The Last Supper is about a group of grad students in their 20s who live together in a house in the suburbs of Iowa. One night, they spontaneously invite a stranger played by Paxton over for dinner, but when he turns out to be dangerous, a scuffle breaks out and the students end up killing him. Instead of calling the police, the friends bury the body in the backyard. They don't feel any guilt, justifying the murder by saying he deserved it. But that's when the story takes a dark turn. They begin inviting other people over for dinner, people they consider morally or politically corrupt, and then they also kill them. The film caused a lot of controversy because one of the characters they murder was allegedly inspired by conservative radio show host Rush Limbaugh. The cast is stacked. Not only does it include Paxton, but also Ron Perlman, Mark Harmon, Jason Alexander, Annabeth Gish, Cameron Diaz, and Courtney B. Vance. Despite the title, the film doesn't dive deeply into religious themes, but interestingly, the 5 college friends are all named after disciples. Even with such a strong cast, the movie was made on a shoestring budget, only $500,000, and it was shot in just 18 days. But unfortunately, it still didn't make a profit at the box office.
We're almost there, Violet. Just hang on. He's coming.
Next is Bound from 1996. Before the Wachowskis convinced any studio to take a chance on The Matrix, they had to prove themselves. This was the movie that did it. It's wild to think that the filmmakers behind one of the most innovative sci-fi epics ever got their start with a low-budget crime thriller. Jennifer Tilly plays a woman dating a mobster portrayed by Joe Pantoliano, who also would go on to appear in The Matrix. She falls for her mysterious next-door neighbor portrayed by Gina Gershon. The two women hatch a plan to steal over $2 million from the mob. The second half of this movie is a tense, violent roller coaster, and you are constantly on the edge of your seat. Bound was controversial at the time for its depiction of a lesbian relationship, which was rare in mainstream cinema back then. According to the Wachowskis, several studios pressured them to rewrite the script so that the neighbor character would be a man, but they refused, insisting on telling the story their way, and it paid off. Bound feels refreshingly different from your typical crime thriller. The Wachowskis were heavily influenced by Billy Wilder's work, especially films like Double Indemnity and Sunset Boulevard. And visually, the film took cues from Frank Miller's Sin City comics, which had just recently been published.
Will you rob a bank with me?
I will, Grim.
Next up is Quick Change, and this is one of Bill Murray's most overlooked films, and it has a much lighter tone than most of the other movies on this list. Murray plays a criminal mastermind who pulls off the perfect bank robbery. But to be clear, this isn't a heist movie. The robbery happens in the first few minutes and goes off without a hitch. The real story is about everything that goes wrong afterward. as Murray and his two accomplices, played by Randy Quaid and Gina Davis, try to escape New York. Their getaway car gets destroyed, they can't find a cab, and they don't have enough money for bus fare, and to top it off, they're being chased by mobsters and the police. Murray actually co-directed this film after Ron Howard dropped out. Apparently Howard didn't like the script because he felt the characters weren't likable enough. And I'll admit they aren't exactly the Ocean's 11 crew, but I still found myself rooting for them the whole way through. The movie is full of tense, chaotic moments where things seem like they're really going right, only for them to fall apart again. Our next film is Grand Canyon, written and directed by Lawrence Kasdan. Despite the title, 99% of this film actually takes place in Los Angeles. If you don't know Kasdan, he's one of the most prolific writers in Hollywood. He worked on several Star Wars films, including The Empire Strikes Back, and co-wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark. He's also directed great movies like Silverado and The Big Chill. Grand Canyon was marketed as The Big Chill for the 90s, but honestly I don't think the two films have that much in common. This one examines the racial and economic divides in Los Angeles, and it weaves together several interconnecting stories with a diverse cast. It's not a film for everyone, but there is a scene in the first 15 minutes that I think is one of the most intense, powerful scenes in any movie I have ever seen. Even if the premise doesn't grab you, watch the first 15 minutes and then decide if you want to watch it. The film stars Kevin Kline, Steve Martin, Danny Glover, and a young Mary Louise Parker well over a decade before her breakthrough role in Weeds. And last on the list, and definitely the strangest movie here, is eXistenZ, one of David Cronenberg's most unappreciated films.
It's going to be a wild ride.
Even though Cronenberg is a respected director, his work has always leaned towards the bizarre, and a lot of audiences don't quite know what to make of his movies. But I genuinely think eXistenZ is one of his most accessible films. It's about a security guard who must protect a game designer from being assassinated by a radical anti-technology group. Why? Because apparently she's created a new virtual reality game that blurs the line between real life and fantasy, and people are terrified of what this might mean for the future. Think of it as a more grounded, psychological version of Ready Player One. The film stars Jennifer Jason Leigh and Jude Law, with William Dafoe in a small but memorable supporting role. So there you have it. That's my list of 10 forgotten 90s films that you should absolutely check out. If you've got any underrated gems to recommend, drop them in the comments, and as always, thank you for watching.